So, welcome back to our discussion today where we're shining a light on domestic violence and non lethal assaults in Prince George's County. Before you heard from our safety officers, now you're going to hear from a few prosecutors and defense attorneys. So, here on this panel, we have defense attorney Malik Shakur. Thank you for joining us today. The newly appointed executive director of the Development Authority, Mr. Perry Paylor. Attorney of Family Mediation, Dr. Lionel Green Sr. Thank you for joining us today. And to my right, we have attorney Jay Wyndal. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hey, we have a powerhouse, a lot people that like to run their mouths up here today. But right now we got the mic, right, Sterling J? We had a mic. So, definitely we had a great conversation with our safety officers. But we know that you all play a very important part in taking cases or defending cases. Keeping the system. All right, he don't have a mic. He said keeping the system honest. So definitely we would like to be to hear from you all on how, what are the most common challenges you face when prosecuting a domestic violence cases without physical injury or no weapon?
Yeah. And good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Perry Paylor, and I previously served as Deputy State's Attorney under the Honorable Aisha and Brave Boy for 5 years. And so, yes, our office we have a special victims unit where we do prosecute domestic violence cases. We have a team of dedicated attorneys, and that's all they do is prosecute these cases. And I guess based on your question, when there's no physical evidence, often the case hinges heavily on the testimony of the complaining witness or victim. And so often that we have to rely on their testimony. And some of the challenges are, obviously there's some anxiety with coming to court. Sometimes, based on the size in our dockets, there's a lot of time that might elapse. Someone could be involved in an incident June 1st. You might not make it to court for the criminal case until maybe September, things of that nature. So with time, sometimes there reconciliation. Sadly, sometimes there may be threats against the complaining witness, particularly if a person's not held prior to trial. So there's certain things that, and like I said, some people are just not comfortable coming to court testifying against someone that they're romantically involved with. There's economic factors. If they're married or they cohabitate, they might have to split bills. There's financial responsibility on both ends. And we know being involved in criminal justice can impact the person's ability to earn income, which impacts the household. So sometimes the victims have to weigh all these things and considering whether to move forward. Sadly, we try to provide opportunities to make sure that they feel safe and secure. Sometimes we're forced to provide resources to relocate victims who are not in a situation where they can remain in the same home. And so we try to provide some resources for that. And I want to follow up on something that you said in the first session. In my new capacity as Executive Director of the Redevelopment Authority, we have an array of surplus properties. And so as a lot of companies did not return to work, there's still a large telework community. I would like to work with you to identify spaces and maybe we could convert and have places where women and families can be safe. And I'm sure that we could bring the county executive along on that one. And so let's make sure we continue the conversation. And we got other people here who want to talk, but I could talk about that for a long time. So let's make sure we continue the conversation. All right, thank you.
Yes, definitely appreciate you saying that because we have a lot of nonprofits in the room and we always ask the question about these surplus properties. And my delegate, told me, Tasha, find a property and they help, with the to give money in order for us to be able to fix those up. So my question to the defense attorneys, how do you, when somebody come to your office, how do you, I guess, pick or choose what cases you're going to take when it comes down to domestic violence? I'm saying because I know looking at both of y'all, none of y'all like to lose, right? But how do you pick a case? Let's say that because sometimes in some cases, maybe that person did not actually abuse that other person, but how do you figure that part out when there's no guns involved, when it could be somebody's career on the line? How do you figure that part out on taking a case and defending that individual, whether if it's a male or female? They both want.
You go
You
first,
got-
and I'll go second.
No, go ahead. Age before
But you,
wisdom.
We don't turn down any cases. If you've been charged with a crime, there's a presumption of innocence, and some of us tend to forget about that. You're presumed innocent, you're cloaked in innocence. So we want to hear about it. When there's no injuries, and would you say no violence, no weapons? No lethal weapons. I mean, most times, that doesn't, in my opinion, constitute necessarily assault. I mean, it's just her word against his. And in order to prove somebody guilty beyond reasonable doubt, I would think that you're going to need a little bit more than that. And then you have situations where they reconcile even before the case is even charged. And so you know that you're going to go to court and you charge your fee, but you know the case is going to get dismissed. And I know you talked about prosecuting cases, where sometimes there are no injuries and things of that nature. Well, sometimes people just weaponize the system and accuse men of doing things that they haven't done. And so we don't have enough conversations about that. And I tend to see a whole lot more of that than I actually see domestic violence in the cases that I represent. And I'm not hand-picking or cherry-picking my cases. I'm just, okay, you got no injuries, there's no weapon or allegation of a weapon involved, why are we here? And those are the cases that I would fight. Like, I'm going to fight that one all the way through. Like, I'm not going to just let that one go. I'm definitely not going to take a plea on it unless, I'm not even going to take a plea. It's either going to get steadied or it's going to get null pros. And most times it's going to get null pros. So I'll go ahead. I don't want to talk.
I want to jump in real quick, and I want to follow up on something Attorney J. Wyndal Gordon said. We become, as prosecutors, we become very, well, we definitely pay attention when there's a family law case attached. And so oftentimes there could be a custody battle and things like that, and then people have been married peacefully for 10 years, and then allegations pop up, and all of a sudden there's a family court hearing the next day for custody. And so that's one of the things, and we agree with Mr. Gordon that people are presumed innocent, and we have to objectively review the evidence. And is this a case where a person was assaulted or a child was assaulted, or is this something that is being used to assist in a family case matter, right? And so we have to always be careful and make sure, because our role is not just to prosecute, put people to jail, it's to pursue justice. And when we find, based on the evidence, that the case ought to be and should be dismissed, then we're trained to act accordingly. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off Attorney Shakur.
We have somebody in the audience with a question.
So my name is Kevin Holland, and my question was actually for you, talking about the system being weaponized, right?
Yeah.
So my question for the sheriff was, how do we stop it from being weaponized? Because it's nothing set in play before they read that black and white.
So
They going off the piece of paper.
So that's a great question, because in order to have somebody charged with a crime, all you have to do is go down to the commissioner's office, raise your right hand, and just say, I hereby declare on the penalty of perjury that the foregoing statement is true and correct based upon my personal knowledge, and tell a story. And then the next thing you know, if you tell a story good enough, say the right buzzwords such as gun involved, choking, or something like that, it's going to be an arrest warrant. So you can get arrested just because I went down and said, you did this to me.
I got a job and 4 kids. I got a lot of stuff.
You got a job and 4 kids, and guess what? You may not get a bail depending upon how good she wrote her report. And it's just a report. It's just words on paper. Ain't nothing been, that's no investigation. Well, they screen cases sometimes. But if you write a good enough report, you're gonna get arrested either on your job, at your home, during a traffic stop, whatever the case may be, and they're gonna hold you if they feel as though you're a threat to yourself or a threat to the community or a threat to the so-called victim. And you gotta wait till your case is resolved in court. So there are no fail-safe apparatuses in place to stop somebody from going to the commissioner's office and saying that you did this.
So-
I remember
so-
good times when you
so-
said, Michael hit me.
But this
Some of y'all don't
is
remember
what I
that, but
wanted
that's how
to
it works.
say in reference to that, because out on the campaign trail, I remember a mother and and a daughter of the person who ended up getting killed. The guy went and walked his dog, and he told the young lady, "Hey, when I get back, I'd like for you to be out of my home." When he came back with the dog, I guess police was out there, and he reached like that. The police shot and killed him. The young lady, I guess, said that, hey, I was felt threatened or whatever. So the police already came ready. They felt like he had something. So there, it looked like, I guess, there's no law in place when people falsely accuse somebody.
She really caused the whole situation. This to make, I guess it's like worse than what it was always about to be. That's what she got. To make his life way worse than what it was about to be. That's why he ended up getting shot. Like, you never know what happens when they call the police. It's not never just gonna be a conversation. You say X, Y, and Z.
No, but my question is to the legal is what is in place when, like, let's say if I was the one who made the call and I said, hey, this is happening, but I lied. And they found out that Dag ain't have a weapon, Dag had was more to it than meet the eye. That, hey, he actually called his mom and say, Mommy, this is what I'm doing. His family all knew about it and said, hey, I'm walking the dog, whatever. And all of a sudden they hit pop out, her son got shot. What's in place? Because I know that you all work off of the law. What's in place when, because we do have victims, we do have people that abuse, but what happened when people misuse our system, make those calls, because it's money spent on both ends. But what happened to that person, whether if it's a man who falsely accused somebody and can write real well, like how you mentioned, what's in place for that person?
So we do have laws on the books. You can be charged with giving a false statement to a police officer. You can be charged with perjury. But that's all in theory. In practice, none of that happens. There's never any accountability for someone making a false claim against another person. And that's probably why I would venture to say a lot of times nothing happens. There's just nothing that's there. Prosecutors are not interested in prosecuting an alleged victim for making a false statement. They just have no interest in that. And in my 30 years, I've never seen one prosecuted.
Yeah, but I think it's still something probably to do with the law, because if we had laws in place, it would save money, I guess, far as from the police being called, number one, because that costs us money. Number two, far as our prosecutors and different people had to take on a case, that, hey, this person, basically just wasted, our money. So I think, maybe that can be something that can be looked at. I think in Washington, D.C., if a person call, I think they lock up both people because they don't know who's telling the truth. It's like they take both people in. I don't know if that's right, but we don't have that in place here. All right.
But I will say,
Warrior lawyer, you lost your thought. All right, you done lost this case now. You done- no. What I'm saying is, there any place, whether if it's DC, is there any place that have something like that? Because you don't know who's telling the truth.
right. And so what I was going to say to that is you don't know. So you got this system in place that, yeah, it's not a perfect system. But you don't want the real victim to be further victimized because she didn't pass the credibility test. So it's really a balance of discretion, really. So you just hopeful you have honorable officers on the streets who will thoroughly investigate, as the sheriffs and the other law enforcement individuals here said, that they'll thoroughly investigate the case, because you really don't know, because again, there is no accountability for anybody to go down and make charges. Because what you'll see a lot of times is that when one person files charges against somebody alleging domestic violence, the person who charged will file charges against that person. And so when you go to court, we defense lawyers, we love it because we charge a fee, but we know how it's going to end up because they both have to hire lawyers. And we like, okay, where you going after this? But the bottom line is, when two people are charged with domestic violence and there's no clear determination as to who was the actual aggressor, if they both decide to take their cases to trial, they both could be found guilty, or they can both be found not guilty because you have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And if you have a lawyer is going to tell you, look, you're not going to testify against him. She's not going to testify against you. Y'all figure out what y'all need to do, break up. This case is going to be over with. Nobody's going to jail today. Everybody's going to leave with their record intact. Everybody's going to get a not guilty because they cancel each other out. And in fact, a lot of times it does take two to tango. You know, a lot of times, I don't know too many shrinking violets inside the Beltway in Prince George's County or outside the Beltway in Prince George's County. People ain't gonna just let you sit up and beat on them in Prince George's or these other counties. So there's gonna be a fight. It's not always where someone's just dominating somebody. And so if you had two people going at each other, then two people need to be charged and they'll work it out in court.
All right. We have a question in the audience. We have two questions, so here we go.
Well, to answer your question, LaTasha, that's not how it goes in D.C. I can tell you because I broke up with my son's mother, and she came to my house in the middle of the night, banging on my door, and I happened to have someone else in there. She called the police and told them that I put my hands on her. When that officer showed up, he said, "You should have called the police. She's at your house." He said, "But I know you didn't put your hands on her, but we got to take you because she said you did." But the next day, I got a call from him. He said, "I told the district attorney that I didn't believe that you put your hands on her." So they threw it out the next day. But to answer your question, no, that's not how
in DC, you was in your home. You had somebody else in your home. The baby mama came to your home, but they took you. So in DC, they take somebody. So in Prince George's, do we take people or we just so maybe I got it wrong. No, I had it wrong. In DC, he didn't do anything, but they took him because she accused him. In Prince George's County, it sounded like from what the safety officer said, they don't take anyone or whatever. It looked like it's written up or whatever the case may be, and they ask for maybe the victim or whoever to leave to get into a safe space. But that's what it is in DC. They take somebody getting locked up.
Can I say? Okay. I just wanted to kind of speak on what you just talked about, and then a few questions prior to that. So you got away really well with that situation just because people knew you. But what about the people who are charged that didn't do anything? What type of or what are the proper channels that those people can take to get their records expunged, or is that even an option?
You want to get it? I can get it, but anybody can get it. I get it.
Okay.
So when your case is dismissed, or if you've been found not guilty, you can automatically go to the clerk's office and have your record expunged. It doesn't cost a thing. It takes about 10 minutes for lay people to fill it out, maybe 5 minutes for lawyers to fill it out. So you don't need a lawyer. Don't pay a lawyer to do your expungement paperwork for you unless you just don't feel like it and don't mind paying the money, because it takes you 10 minutes to fill it out. And so, yeah, so you can have your record expunged, but you've already been through a horrible experience. You got locked up. You may have lost your job. If they held you long enough, you would have lost your housing and all kinds of things that fall out. And you don't even get an apology after your case has been dismissed or you've been found not guilty. You're just left to fend for yourself and put the pieces back together.
Real quick to add to that, I was on parole, so I had to go answer for that.
You was on parole.
Yeah, so I still had to answer to my parole officer for that.
And once again, when women know those situations, they already know that you can't do anything, or whatever the case may be. So my advice: don't date. Don't date, because if she get mad and she know you on parole, all she have to do is make that call. and send your butt back to jail. It's just that easy. It's
And
unfair.
the thing about being on parole is the burden of proof is not as high as it is in a criminal case. So a criminal case is proof beyond reasonable doubt. That's way up here. But on parole, it's by preponderance of the evidence. It's like more likely than not. So sometimes, you can hit this level and not even be able to hit this level, and still you would probably have to go back and serve some portion or the rest of your sentence if they didn't find in his favor. And so a lot of times, if somebody were to come up and decide they want to be present for his parole hearing and, pound on the table and make a big fuss about it, he could have got jammed up pretty badly as a result of this. So it's a lot that goes involved, and nobody really talks about what we're talking about here. So I'm really happy to have this conversation, because there's another side of this whole domestic violence piece that we don't even get to talk about, because a lot of times professionals like myself feel like it's unpopular to take this position, be on the other side of that V and advocate for individuals on the other side of the V. But the other side of the V actually exists, and it needs a voice.
Yeah. And Jay, you had mentioned something, I guess, in reference to sometime, I guess, between the lawyers, it's like the couple kiss and make up. Is it anything that you all can, like, far as documenting, I guess, this occurrence? And also, maybe, I know when I work with juveniles, they would have things that the juvenile would have to do, but maybe, because they already paid y'all money, or whatever the case may be, maybe having them go through some type of real legit, counseling that they can get help, because they kiss and made up, like, hey, we gonna make it work out, hey, I ain't mean to do whatever I did to you, or it's just like, hey, it's done and goodbye, and then they'll call you the next time they have a problem.
Well, mine, I'm not saying too much because my role is in between what they do. I mediate. So that's what ends up happening. A lot of times in DC, family court, if it's a kid involved, the judge is mandatorily sending you to mediation. Maryland, it's voluntary, but the judges now are even sending them to mediation. So I get cases 2-3 a month in advance, like the attorney was saying, that your case might not be until September if you filed it in June. So in between that time, the judge will order that to mediation, although especially if it's a kid involved, and if it's to the point where as a kid involved, they have to come to mediation, work this thing out. And our position is, whether they made up or not, we have to look at the case and see, you can right away tell who's controlling this relationship, who's controlling the conversation, based off of, I'm taking care of everything. So they want to, muscle up in the mediation. And it's my job to give the woman or the man back the power to be able to speak freely in a safe space, and to try to get it to a point before they go to court, or try to get it settled that it don't even go to court.
Mr. Green, you had mentioned, I guess, either giving a power back to the male or female. Can you elaborate on that? Because you said, you're a mediator, so that means that you have both parties in the room with you. So what are you witnessing? So I have a brawl or whatever the case may be, and I come to you or whatever. So you trying to say that men have these issues, that sometimes that they need somebody to be able to help them as well?
Oh yeah, because they either on parole, like y'all said, or sometimes the women are more aggressive than the men, and they're controlling the conversation. You can tell that they're controlling the narrative of what's happening, and to the point of telling the man to shut up in the mediation, and so you have to look at that, and it's sort of shocking to see a man getting verbally beat up like that. But you have to really calm down the female to give. I put them in different rooms, breakout rooms. Yeah, breakout rooms, and try to get them to give me the real story, before I do my write up, and try to get them to either settle, or what we're gonna do with the kids, and try to get them in a safe spot, in a safe space, physically and mentally, that especially, and because we already looked at as the man didn't cause this problem. He didn't did something. What'd he do? So when they get in court, it's a win-lose situation in court. So if the man lose, now most of the time he'll escalate it, because he lost. Now he mad double mad. And then the female, like you said, they'll turn around and say something that they never happened. So it just depends. But I get it before the attorneys get it. If it gets to the judge, and if it gets on the docket, he'll mandatorily send them to mediation first.
I also like what you mentioned that DC had, when there's children involved, it's like mandatory mediation. Maybe that's something that we can push in Maryland. How many people in the audience would like for us to push that in Maryland? They have mandatory mediation. Y'all can make some noise in Maryland when there's children involved, because the main thing is if we could, reconcile and work it out and get those individuals to pay to get help, I think that'd be a good thing. I don't believe it should be like I'm a volunteer, because people are not gonna volunteer to do anything. So
I don't like mandatory things. I don't like the government telling us we gotta do this or we gotta do that. When we're just going through the ups and downs of life, the trifles of life. And I'm not minimizing domestic violence, because domestic violence is real for both men and women, and there are real victims out here. But a lot of times it's just an argument. It's an argument that may end up with a shove or a light push, and none of it is condonable, and it certainly doesn't bode well in a sterile courtroom when you're trying to tell that story. But sometimes people need space just to get themselves together, and you don't need the law to come in and punish someone or mess their record up because they got into an argument that this time went too far. Now we want to make sure that it doesn't go any further than it has to. But I just feel like we take this paternalistic approach to domestic violence sometimes. I've had cases where a woman would go up and tell the prosecutor, I don't want to prosecute this case. I don't want this case to go forward. He never did this to me, or you're just protecting him. You're just trying to protect him because he pays the bills in the house, but I don't believe you now. I believed your story back then. So we're still going to take him to trial. I mean, I've had prosecutors do that in my experience, where the woman's basically told, but it works out good for me because she'll tell me the same thing. She say, I talked to the prosecutor, she's not listening. I say, okay, you talking to me? This is how we're going to do it. And she wouldn't be hostile to me because we're on the same team. So what she could do, I get a friend of mine, I see Mr. Shakur out there, I say, advise her on the right to take the Fifth Amendment so that she doesn't have to testify if they're not married. If they're married, they got the marital privilege so that she doesn't have to testify. And then she'll take the stand. The prosecutor thinks she's got something, put the witness on the stand, witness takes the Fifth, prosecutor's got no evidence, case gets dismissed. But you have situations where prosecutors, because they don't like this person, maybe he's been to court a couple times before for the same thing, and they're just tired of seeing him or tired of seeing this couple, and they just decided that this time somebody's going down. And so you just have to watch out for those situations where, you have situations like that where prosecutors are just gung-ho because, or it could be some kind of bias or racism. Like he comes to court with his pants sagging and everything, and prosecutor just doesn't like what she sees, and she's just determined to do something to him. So it's, as defense lawyers, we got a lot of tools in the toolbox, a lot of tricks of the trade that we can use to kind of make things go away legally. And so we use those things, but you do have prosecutorial, I think, what do you call it, I'm not going to, overzealousness, overreach. And so, and when they overreach, you make them pay.
I do want to respond to something. Every single time a woman is killed in domestic violence, the first thing they do is come to the courthouse and research how many times had that couple been to court. Every single time. And then you know what they do? They call the state's attorney and they say, they were in court 2 years ago. What happened? Why didn't you prosecute? They were in court 6 months ago. Why didn't you prosecute? Oh, she said it didn't happen. Oh, they decided to take the Fifth. Oh, and then she turns up dead. And none of the defense attorneys around when we standing on that courthouse steps talking to the post and explaining that we gave them the opportunity to come forward. We provided resources. We tried to get them to go to mediation. Now, at some point, a decision was made that the person didn't want to move forward. And we are held accountable. Only thing we can do is provide the avenue for that victim to seek justice, right? And so we will say, hey, go forward, tell the judge. Don't just tell me, well, it didn't happen. You take the stand, take the oath, and tell the judge that that didn't happen, or assert your Fifth Amendment right. Because we're not going to have anybody to say, because look, it used to be in the 60s and 70s, black women couldn't get justice. They come to the courthouse, prosecutor say, oh, it didn't happen. That's your boy, and go away. They wouldn't even give the women a chance to take the stand and testify, right? It wasn't until we started to have diversity in prosecution, until we started to have black prosecutors to come forward and say, hey, tell your story. Tell your story. Now, if you make an election, you don't tell your story, and you turn up dead 6 months from now, it's not going to be on the prosecutors, because we were here for you, we were ready to fight for you, and let the judge dismiss it. Just say, hey, look, I don't find you credible, or you took your Fifth Amendment. But we're here to always fight and protect you. So I don't take qualms with anything what Mr. Gordon said, but when every time, like I said, when these people come up dead, they want to know what happened 2-3 years ago, what happened with this case, what happened, and we back there pulling up records saying, well, they took the Fifth. Well, why didn't you force them to testify? We're trying to explain that. So I just think there's sides, two sides to this, but we will err on the side of protection. We will err on the side of saving lives.
The flip side of that is, and I got to talk about the flip side. The flip side is that somebody could actually go to jail who's innocent because this person told you initially that it didn't happen, but because you're forcing them to take the stand so that they don't feel like they're going to be perjuring themselves or feel like they could be convicted of perjury, they're going to continue and maintain this lie all the way through. And so you have somebody who really didn't do anything end up going to jail because a prosecutor had decided that, I'm not going to take your word that it happened. I got your written word right here that's inconsistent with what you're telling me now. We're still going to go forward, even though the lady has decided that, she wasn't telling the truth back then. She wants to tell the truth now. And so there's a flip side. So the system just doesn't eat the victim all the time. Something it can eat anybody. Anybody
Right.
can be eaten up by this system.
That's why what I'm hoping that when people waste our tax dollars and when they lie or whatever the case may be, that is real consequences for them. I know you said that it's stuff in writing, but it's a waste of our tax dollars. There's real people out there that's really going through something. But I think that it shouldn't just be thrown out because a person lied or whatever the case may be. Like you say, it's consequences when a person don't follow through and then they come back because the family's looking to blame somebody and say, oh, they came here, y'all didn't help. But if they sit up there and say, hey, it didn't happen, and y'all make those agreements, basically you all are doing your job. Just like they witness, they know that their family members getting abused or whatever the case may be, they can encourage them to tell the truth. So I just say that, it should be something in place when people are not telling the truth and they wasting our tax dollars. There should be consequences. Now, a lot of people raising your hand like y'all in school. Y'all done stirred up a lot of conversation,
And I
but
just don't want it to be that people are afraid
It's for-
to go forward with these matters because they feel like if I lose, I could end up getting prosecuted myself or having to pay attorney's fees, whatever the case may be. We still want the system to be accessible to everybody, and we don't want victims who are true victims hesitant about
Right.
making their case. So,
yeah.
so it's really one of those things. It's just an imperfect system, and you
Right.
need defense
And
lawyers.
I think people have taken advantage of the imperfect system too. They've taken advantage of the imperfect system. So my whole thing is if one of my friends, family members, or whatever, if they had a situation, definitely I want, consequences. But if they not telling the truth about it, that means that you didn't involve me in something. You didn't lie on this person, you didn't discredit this person, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes people end up getting killed over stupid stuff. I still think it should be consequences, but I know that there's nothing y'all can do about it. But we'll be hearing from our lawmaker later, saying what we can put in place, I guess, in reference to some of these things, because Sheriff Cost say they get 2,000 cases a month.
So you gotta be clear that when somebody's lied, that they've actually lied. You're not necessarily going to be accused of lying because you lost your case or because one person was more credible than you are. We're not looking for those types of cases. We're looking for the types of cases where you got a video out here which clearly shows, and you clearly arguing it with somebody 20 feet down the way. Those are the cases. There won't be a lot of prosecutions for somebody bringing false charges. False charges can be brought, but you're really not going to get to the bottom of it because it's the system is your forensic laboratory, and you are in this courthouse or going to court to determine who's telling the truth. Now, believe it or not, it's a lot of lies being told in court. I mean, court is where you tell lies. I mean, if you ask some people, because
But what happened to the lie detector? Why
Huh?
how much does it
because
cost to do the
it
lie
was
detector,
incredible.
man? I'm
It-
like,
it,
come
it was,
on.
It wasn't. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't work.
Because some people get nervous
So it's
anyway.
not that
so-
somebody lost the case. Like, I don't want somebody prosecuted for losing the case. I mean, if you told a lie and it's clear, like undisputed, then yeah, go ahead. You can prosecute that. But if you lost or somebody's story was better than your story, then that's not enough for me.
or because she broke up with you, now you got a problem, or vice versa. Yeah, so sometimes things like that happen.
You know, the way I look at this, a lot of times it's about money for real. I mean, a lot of what's happening, especially since the Me Too movement, a lot of these things are happening organically. You have people suffering from PTSD, even kids suffering from PTSD because of what they've seen in their home, and it's that and other. My question is, what solution, what tangible solution deals with this? Like you say, you have a lot of people just telling lies now. You have,
They've always
especially
told
when but now you got AI that can tell a better lie than you ever could. And so if you have somebody working and doing that, but one thing that I've seen in like Arlington or Alexandria, they have professionals that go out with some of these police officers that's going in there in those domestic violence situations, can determine a lot of what's happening. But that costs money. And so if you sending the sheriff's office out, or he has 2,000 cases and he has like 40 or 50 officers, how can they, because they have all these other things they have to deal with, how can they rightly develop or see what's going on in that situation? But if they have a professional that's going with them that actually understands what's happening and can say, okay, well, this person might be lying, or it's just an argument, or it's food insecurity here, or it's poverty that's taking advantage here. What type of solution is the county, and I guess this might be for Attorney Perry because he was in that section, what type of solution is the county willing to provide? Now, I know it's going to cost money, and that's going to always be an issue because now you have all these people coming up saying we need to cut. We need to cut dollars, we need to cut funding, we need to cut this, we need to cut that, and not looking in the long run how this is going to affect our community.
Yeah, I'll respond real quick. One of the things that we need is we have a small version of, well, let me start at the beginning. Charges can be brought a couple of ways, but we have, in Maryland, we have citizen complaints. So that means anybody can go down and file a complaint. I can say, Attorney Gordon punched me in the eye right on stage in front of everybody. I can go ahead and file a complaint today. I can go down in the next hour and file a complaint. We have a citizen complaint screening where charges are filed. So the charges are filed, then they're processed to our office, and then we get the opportunity to review and decide whether or not we are going to move forward. And when you file those citizen complaints, you automatically get a screening date. So the complaining witness gets a date in our office to come and screen the case. A couple things. The number one issue is FTA. So a lot of people don't follow up and come screen the case. So that means it's already going to be dismissed. But we need more resources. As anybody can go down and file a charge, we would need more to expand our citizen review screening unit to make sure that we're putting more eyes on these charges. And we have camera right here. So I would go down and write the charges. Well, either I bring the footage or Mr. Gordon has to get the footage and take it to his lawyer, so I never punched anybody. But that could take weeks, right? And so we have to make sure that we're putting the resources on the front end to make sure that we have the ability to scrutinize every case. And sometimes that's been a challenge. At one point, other counties had as many as 15 attorneys in a screening unit. They don't go to court. They just screen and watch footage. And so what was happening when we started with Miss Brave Boy, we only had 3. And so we had to fight to get it up to 7 or 8 to really get there. And that's not where we want to be. And I know she's going to continue to support that effort to fund that office as county executive. But those are the things that go on. When we talk about our budget and resources, you said it better than any of us, it takes money. And we have to commit that that's where we want to spend our dollars, because in a time with budget shortfall, we got to have priority, right? And we got to make sure that funding our state's attorney's offices, particularly in those areas, is a priority.
think by domestic violence, being one of the highest one, that may be an area where we could, put our focus so that we do a much better job, or people know that we had those things in place. And I think it may be a deterrent, it may deter some of the behavior, if we change some of the processes and implement some of the things. But I wanted to hear from Mr. Shakur over there.
I've realized that there's been a common theme that one's characteristics play a role in a case, and this is a question for Attorney Shakur. So I was wondering how might a case, whether that be the decision of a trial or how you might form your argument, might differ based on one's gender or race or age or economic status?
Thank you for the question, Saeed. All right, to begin with, number one, I don't take into consideration someone's race, age, socioeconomic, position, so forth and so on, those external factors. And to a lesser extent, do I take in what they tell me happened. The only thing that I'm concerned about in a domestic violence case or any other case is what the state can prove and what they can't prove. And oftentimes in domestic violence cases, they're what I like to call he said, she said cases, where you'll have someone who goes down to the commissioner's office, clearly where there wasn't an arrest for an assault in the particular case, but they'll go to the commissioner's office and they'll swear under the penalties of perjury that X, Y, and Z happened. So when it's your word in a legal setting versus another person's word, the state has the burden. They have to prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And in those situations, I tell my clients all the time, look, you don't have to be more believable than the other party. All you have to do is be equally as believable as the other party. And therein lies the essence of reasonable doubt, because after hearing both stories and the judge doesn't know which party to believe, he has to find the defendant not guilty in that situation. There's been talk on this panel and the previous panel about having reluctant witnesses in domestic violence cases. And I think it's very important that the state and the police, that they rely on extrinsic evidence, right? Not necessarily eyewitness testimony or what the complaining witness has to say, but you want to talk to neighbors and see if there have been, if they heard anything or if there have been, previous incidents. You want to go through the 911 call logs to see if there have been previous calls for services at that address between those parties, and things of that nature to, help solidify or build your case. You want to use 911 calls and, any evidence outside of the witness, the complaining witness itself. I just really wanted to address a point that that's really disturbed me being on this panel and listening to the previous panel. There's been a suggestion made or a presumption made that the abusers in domestic violence cases are men and that the victims, are women. But, it certainly goes both ways. There are women who are abusers. There are, men who are abused. There are same-sex couples, who are involved in domestic violence relationships. And we really do our community a disservice by looking at these cases in black and white as man versus woman or woman versus man or whatever the case may be. Anybody can be a victim. If you live in Mitchellville or if you live in Hyattsville, whether you make $100,000 a year or whether you make $25,000 a year, you can be a victim of domestic violence. You can be a domestic violence abuser. So I think that we, as a community, need to disavow ourselves of the notion that, men are the typical abusers and women are the victims, and, women lie and victims lie and this, that, and the other. In a domestic violence case, I tell my clients all the time, and I don't want to hog the show, but I feel like this is the only opportunity I've gotten to speak. But
He said he got the mic now.
yeah, right. I'm not letting it go. But in domestic violence cases, I tell my clients these are the sexy cases, right? These are the high value cases, right? Most state's attorney's offices in Maryland, they have a specific domestic violence unit where they have attorneys who may do one docket a week, but they may have 30 or 40 domestic violence cases that they're responsible for. They have witness advocates and so forth. The judges are receiving special training on domestic violence issues. So when you have a domestic violence case, I tell clients all the time, it's like, look, you might have been better off going out on the corner and punching a random 80-year-old man in the face, you know what I'm saying, than to be accused of abusing your partner, because there's a higher, it commands higher attention. There are more resources involved. And also, too, I tell clients, judges and prosecutors is all about covering your backside, right? Because the last thing that they want to do is be light or lenient on a domestic abuser, and then 2 weeks later have that domestic abuser kill the complaining witness or the quote-unquote victim in that case. And now the judge or the prosecutor has to answer to that. So they would rather lose at trial and give their witness their day in court than to dismiss these cases in a lot of situations. So I hope I answered your question.
Ooh.
I did want to piggyback on.
Don't give Jay that mic.
I just wanted to say, you mentioned race as being a factor, and I kind of said, I probably suggested in the beginning that it's not a factor because I'm thinking about Prince George's County, but I practice law all across the state of Maryland, and Maryland is not like Prince George's County. So you might be up in Cecil County, all the way from Cecil to Garrett County to Wacomico County. You got an interracial couple. Perhaps you got a black male and a white female, or vice versa. You have to think about those things. Like, race still is a factor, even though we try to pretend like it's not. It very much so is a factor. And so you have to determine what your client's risk tolerance is. Like, we can go to trial, but because you always have to know who you are, what you are, where you are. And so you can go to trial, but understand that the jury is not necessarily going to look like you in Cecil County or Harford County or Wacomico County or Carroll County or Frederick County, or I can go on, Kent County. It's not going to look like you. So you have to always take that into consideration and determine whether or not the fight is worth it. Because sometimes it may not be, because you get in one of those counties and you got a judge who's a hangman judge, and you come up on the wrong side with the wrong result, and then you could find yourself in a situation that you probably could have avoided.
That's funny you mentioned domestic violence cases between interracial couples in Cecil County. Many years ago, I had a case where I got a call from this mother. She lived in Baltimore. Her son lived in Harford County, and he was a black dude, and he was accused of throwing his 20-year-old, and he's like 38, 40-something years old, of throwing his 20-year-old white girlfriend out of a second-story window, right? And I was like thinking in my head when I went to see him at the jail, I was like, brother, your best days is behind you. You in Harford County, it's over for you. So, I did my due diligence, and I went out to the house, and I'm thinking second story, 20 feet high or whatever. And it was a house that was built into a hill. And so the second story was only like maybe 10 feet off of the ground or whatever. But, so it wasn't like, yeah. Well, 10 ain't 20, but it wasn't, it wasn't a typical, but in any event, listen, I wind up not getting the case, and they hired an attorney from Baltimore, and he wind up getting like 24 years. So, yeah, right. It was, well. Not that bad. Not 24 years worth of injury.
But he still threw out the window, y'all.
Okay, so that's a whole nother conversation. I know, but I'd like to circle back to what we were saying about people that lie. And so I'd like to circle back to what we were saying about people that, you know, lie when they go to court. I was actually had an incident where someone, well, it wasn't even really domestic violence. She was making false claims. And they were able to prove, the police officer actually was the one who was able to prove that she was lying. So she had said that someone, my son-in-law, had used my vehicle to go to Baltimore, and so, and held a gun to her head. Now, he was home the whole day, and we were able to prove that. And he certainly didn't have my vehicle because I was in Southern Maryland. And so, the situation could have been much worse than it turned out, because I dropped my daughter off and I go to leave. And, you know, I see all the police, but I'm thinking something happened in the neighborhood. And they pull me over. And there's, you know, guns drawn, people, I'm looking and I'm like, it's 3 different counties. And then it hit me immediately when I saw Baltimore County that it was her. But she's made so many false claims, and she's gotten, she took a plea, and it was put on the stat docket.
Yeah.
But if she's still doing it, she's still making false claims, what do we do about that?
Who want to answer that question?
What I think, what I think should happen in situations like that, where you have a witness who's constantly going to the commissioner's office and making false statements, I think that there should be some type of flag that's put on that person's name, and that when the state's attorney's office see that name come up, that they do more extensive or further investigation. Because the last thing that you want to do is, you know, and I don't want to presume your age, but I'm sure you're familiar with the Boy Who Cried Wolf story, right? It was very popular when I was a kid, right? So, yeah. So, so when the boy wasn't crying wolf, right? Everybody was like, "Oh, you lying? We not falling for the, you know, banana in the tailpipe again, you know, to use another, you know." But in any event, nobody wants to be that person where you ignore a witness, and this time it happens to be true. So, you know, they have to do their due diligence. But it is a problem. And if I could tell another short story, I had a client, and he was messing with this girl. She was crazy as all get out, right? So she had accused him in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and Washington, D.C. of different charges. And this guy, he comes to court and he's got 3 ankle bracelets on, right? So the Montgomery County case, she says that he broke in her house, and it just completely, utterly ridiculous claims that he broke in her house and he set a fire and he burned up her important information that she needed to use for evidence in this other case. And then, you know, he tried to rape her while she's driving the car through D.C. and this, that, and other. And then in Prince George's County, she was in his neighborhood, and, you know, he's like, "I don't want anything to do with you, leave me alone." And she's following him through his neighborhood, and she winds up hitting him with the car. So he gets hurt, and she goes to the commissioner's office and files charges against him, saying that he assaulted her. But fortunate for him is that one of his neighbors happened to be mowing the lawn and saw the incident. So they filed charges against her for first-degree assault, second-degree assault.
That's good.
They dismissed the felony charges against her, right? And she has a trial in district court. She loses. She appeals it to the circuit court. The judge in circuit court was like, this is just so egregious that he winds up sentencing her to the maximum penalty of like 10 years in prison, right? So, and this is a woman who, I guess her son at that time must have been about 9 or 10 years old. She was a single mother. And, you know, you have sympathy for someone in that situation, but, you know, she has to be stopped. She can't be allowed to, you know, continue to go on and do that. So, but, yeah, I thought that was timely.
All right.
So this is why I think mediation is so important, because it stops that. One of my techniques as I'm reading the procedures of how this mediation is going to go, I tell them, so, as we go through this, start pulling out your receipts, because you want to go back to the judge with the proof, and if you don't have no receipts, I try to get them to see you really don't have no argument. So if you, and in DC is better than Maryland, because like I said, DC, we get those cases like a month in advance. So we got the time to go through it, write our IRAC summary on it and what's actually being done. And then the judge, the court actually sends us prior history on how many times they've done this. So if they can't pull out the receipts on none of these things, and the guy is sitting in there, or the female is sitting in there saying he's lying, and the other person can't pull out nothing to sustain what they're saying, then it's like, okay, is this what you want to go back into the judge with? And you don't have any proof of anything that you're doing. So most of the time we write it up in the settlement that they just drop it. So now it's about to get stamped that you didn't do none of this, that none of this stuff happened. You can't come back in DC court with this no more. So that's why I think mediation that's what got me to love mediation, versus litigating,
The reason she's on, the case was put on the state docket because the police officer filed charges because she was lying on him as well. So, yeah, so the case was put on the state docket, but she's still doing it, and we're just trying to figure out what action can we take to, prevent this. She's calling the CPS all the time and making false claims with them, and they come out and want to interview the kids all over again. And this has happened about 4 times.
But the only reason why she's been able to probably do this because we don't have laws in place to prevent that. So what I wanted to say today, I have a greater appreciation for, besides y'all just being able to talk and argue, the stuff that you all, face. Because the main thing is tough job. You there to basically to protect, to make sure that you're doing right or whatever. And then its consequences if they look and say, well, hey, this person been here 10 times and y'all never did anything. Everybody want to be able to point the finger. And then on a defense attorney's, job, you there to be able to protect somebody who you believe that, is innocent. And then your job,
just not guilty.
Or just not guilty, right. Not
difference.
Jesus dropped the charge. But your job, as far as the mediation, I definitely believe it's important. And I believe that that's something, especially when family is involved, I think that it should be mediation because you still have to be able to work. If you have children, you still have to be able to work on how you're going to raise them, whether or not if you're going to be together or not, getting to that point. But I definitely understand y'all defense, I guess, when it comes down to, hey, he get locked up, you don't have no job, you don't have no money. That's your income. So if there's any way that, that they can get counseling and work that out, that would be another conversation for our next segment because you all have done it look like you all are doing your job. So let's give it up for our defense attorneys and our prosecutors and our mediators. No, Malik, you don't have a mic.
I just wanted to thank Tasha for having me amongst this esteemed panel of guests. And I just want everybody to take a moment to be thankful and grateful that we have Tasha in Prince George's County as a member of our community for all the things that she's done, all the things that she do, and all the things that she will do.
Hey, I wasn't expecting that. I'm not, he tried to make me tear up, but I'm not gonna do that. But I appreciate each and every one of you all. We all in this community. We all have a part in our community. And thank y'all for taking y'all time out on this beautiful, hot Saturday to be a part of this hot topic. But we're gonna do this again. But thank y'all so much.